welcome back to our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia for part 2 of the refinishing and restoration of a set of Lane Perception living room tables, a cocktail table and 2 end tables from 1963. In the first part we stripped the finish, we did the repairs, and we prepared it for finishing. This is the second part. It's time to get the finish and color back on, so here we go. In part 1, we sanded the whole set down to 150 in anticipation of refinishing it. So really all it needs now is just to be wiped down. We can wipe it down with a rag as I'm doing it. You can also use compressed air to blow it off. But you just want to make sure you've got any loose particles, any dust, any sanding dust, any detritus off, because obviously once you shoot the finish on, you're going to trap that underneath the finish. So I will get this wiped down and we will get ready to seal it. And the system I use when I refinish furniture of this vintage is a lacquer-based system by Mohawk. This right here is what we're going to be spraying on now. It's called Easy Vinyl Sealer. What it is, it's a lacquer-based sealer with a lot of solids in it, and it's designed to seal the wood pores, and also it helps fill some of the small irregularities in the wood in anticipation of building a nice finish. Usually you put 1 or 2 coats of the sealer on, sand it down between coats before you shoot your lacquer on. Now if you don't have access to spray equipment or you don't want to use this system, you can continue to refinish. I would just suggest that you put some kind of a pre-stained sealer on your furniture before you apply a wiping stain, and then you can go from there with your polyurethane or whatever else you choose to put on. I choose to use this system. I apply it with it, via aerosol, because it gives me the best results for the people who ask me to work for them. And that's basically it. We'll let that dry for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'll flip it over, we'll do the top, and we'll move on and do the rest of the tables exactly the same way. And now it's time to do the top. We'll open up the spray pattern a little bit, and then we'll close it up when it's time to touch up any parts on the legs that we couldn't get while it was upside down. And that's our first coat of sealer. Get the other tables and the drawers done. And a real quick point for color matching. This is a clear seal coat. There's no color in it. But look at the difference it makes in the color. So when you're trying to match color, you make sure that you either wet the surface or you get your seal coat on first, because it makes a huge difference. Okay, we've got 2 coats of sealer. I've just got some 4/0 steel wool. 400 is steel wool. And I just rub down between sealer coats, and it does a really nice job of giving us a really nice, smooth base for our finish. Okay, here's what I'm going to use to tackle this color issue. I've got some Mohawk pigmented colors. They call them blend-all powder stains. That's Van Dyke brown. Next to it, the yellow one is raw sienna. Next to that is raw umber, which is the greener side of brown. Next to that is burnt umber, which is the redder side of brown. And then there's a little tiny bit of red there. I've got a container that I'm going to pour my shellac solution in. It's called Lac French, but it's basically just a thin shellac. Then a couple of artist pens and a waxed pencil. Let's take a look at the damage. Here's the first one. See, we have some black lines that come across that. We want to get those in there. That'll help conceal the damage. The second one borders between the ash and the walnut, so I'm going to tape off the damage on the ash and just focus on the walnut. and then we will untape it and then try to do something with this. This is really just a little bit darker. Up close there's a little bit of lightness there, but I think we can just kind of blend that in. But this is difficult and this is difficult. And then just to add insult to injury, we have this semicircular stain that goes across the grain that's really difficult. But if we can get this color to blend into this color to blend into this color, I'll consider it a victory. The bottom line is sometimes this damage just does not come out, and all we can do is the best we can do. So let me get you set up in a stand and get you as close as I can and we get to work. This is just some very, very lightly diluted Van Dyke brown. Okay, there's the first layer down. And then to blend it in and lighten it up just a little bit, it's going to take some very fine steel wool. This is a pretty high grade steel wool that I buy off Amazon, and I save it for stuff like this. It's really very soft. And what I'm doing is just lightly starting to take back the colors I put down, and it's blending everything in as best as we can. And then as you do this, once you get a color layer the way you want, you spray either a top coat of shellac or a top coat of lacquer on it, and that locks it in, and then you can add more color to that, because you get to the point where as you're adding color, your shellac that's carrying your color starts to dissolve the layer that you did underneath it. So you can seal in those colors as you work up light to dark. See, what I want to just see if I can lighten this up a little bit. It got a little bit dark on me. This one I'm really happy with. Yeah, much better. What do you think? And that's the palette that we use to get those colors in there. Well, we've got all the sealing done. Everything has been sanded down. We got the major color damage taken care of. So now it's time to begin the top coating process. And what I'm electing to do is to color this furniture by spraying on a toner. A toner is a colored lacquer product. I basically make it by mixing quite a little bit of lacquer thinner, some lacquer, and then some dye, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And then I spray it on. And the reason I do it this way is because it basically allows me to layer color, kind of like laying different pieces of colored glass to get the result I want. I do not like using penetrating oil stains, wipe-on stains on this kind of furniture. I find that the ash sucks it in. I'm not happy with the result. Plus, once I put it on, I can't adjust it. I'm stuck with it. So this is how I choose to do it. I will show you how I do it right now. And here are the three products I choose to use. I use lacquer thinner, and the majority of the paint cup is filled with that, probably halfway. I then use probably 2, maybe 3 ounces of lacquer. That just allows the solution to bite. And then I color it with this, and I'm sorry, I've got stain all over it, but this is basically an acetone-based dye stain. It's clear. The color is Van Dyke brown, and that's the color that it will provide. And that's the walnut color that we're looking for. So let's give it a whirl. Okay, so you can see how it works. Watch down here. I'm going to shoot down there and see what the color looks like. Can you see how that color goes on? Alrighty, let me get to it and I'll bring you back.
once the color goes on, it's pretty fragile until we get a top coat of lacquer on there. So there's the first top coat of lacquer on the coffee table. I think it looks pretty good. Alright, if you can see in the background there, I've got the other two tables. They've got to get lacquered, but I've got to let this coffee table dry first before I pull it off, and I've got to let them both dry before I flip it over. Had I flipped them over and done the undersides first, I would have run the risk of damaging the color layer that I put on. So I've got to do the top first, let it dry, flip it over, and then do the bottom. Alright, first coat of color and the first coat of lacquer is on. I think they're looking great. That's going to be it for today.
Good morning, we're back at it. Early this morning I sprayed the undersides of these tables with their first coat of lacquer that goes over the color coat, so that's all locked in. The legs on the coffee table had some light spots on them, and I wanted to show you how I'm going to touch those up with some glaze. And then I think I want to put a little bit of glaze on the top of the coffee table because it looks a little bit less rich than do the end table. So let's get to work on these legs. You see right here, that's a little bit light. I don't like the way that looks, and then the edge here is a little bit light. So I've got some Van Dyke brown glaze. Again, glaze is a coloring medium designed to be used between top coat layers. And I'm just going to apply a little bit to this leg, and then using a dry brush, just brush it out. Now this glaze by Mohawk wants 6 hours, or wants to be top coated within 6 hours. I have found that when you use it mixed with naphtha, as I have here, it's ready to be top coated, you know, within an hour or so. When you don't mix it with naphtha, you want to wait the 6 hours, and if you put it on really thick, honestly, you run a risk with it because it really doesn't dry. It's an oil-based glaze, and you got to be careful with it if it goes on thick, or you could have some adhesion problems. Now, by brushing this out in the direction of the grain, it makes it look much more obviously realistic, because if you didn't, it would look ridiculous. But there, how's that look? I like it. Okay, I'm going to get all the rest of these legs done, and we'll go forward from there. Well, I think that's gonna just about be it for this video. We've got numerous coats of lacquer on these pieces right now. The color work's been done. Kind of the purpose of this section of the video is to explain how I do my color work. And it starts with shooting the first layer of color on using a toner, which allows me to control as I can kind of bring it up to the darkness that I want. And actually, if you overshoot it, as long as you don't lacquer coat it, you can usually get it off with some steel wool. It's a little bit tricky and I don't recommend it, but if you're stuck, before you lacquer coat that toner coat, you can work that back. You can braid that back if you have to, but the idea is not to have to. The second thing I wanted to talk about was how we fixed the color spot on the table. And again, we used a shellac-based carrier for our pigment over lacquer sealed wood. So if we made a mistake, just take some alcohol, wipe it off, it's not going to affect the lacquer sealer. So again, it's reversible. It's something that you can play around with, you can adjust, because if you put color directly on wood with no ability to correct it, you got what you got when you apply it. And then finally, we use glazes between top coats. Again, same thing. You can put it on, you can lighten it with dry brushing. If you don't like it, take a rag, damp it with mineral spirits or naphtha, wipe it off. The solvent doesn't affect the lacquer. It allows you to build the color, and then once you seal it with lacquer, that's when you're kind of stuck with it. Okay, so that's what I did. The tables are done for the purpose of the video. What I'll do is I'll leave them to set and cure for a couple of days. Then I'll come back with a flashlight and my OCD and just make sure everything's exactly the way I want it before I call the owner to come get them. So let me bring you in and show you what we accomplished. Here are our end tables. I'm very happy the way they came out. We were able to leave the original, this design element. I don't know why I always draw a blank when I'm trying. This weave design element here. We were able to leave that completely original and yet blend it in. We've got a nice rich walnut color. I think it matches very well with the shading of the tops. Everything looks wonderful. The tops came out great. Very, very happy. And then of course we had, this one was chewed almost in half. That one was chewed up, and we got both of those repaired. So those came out great. And of course, because it's a set, we have to have the same kind of result from the coffee table or the cocktail table. We have really nice color in these legs. We have the original drawer design, again, left the way it was, and then we colored around it to blend it in. The top looks great. Let me bring it in and show you. And there's our top. It looks wonderful. Well, that's going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you may have picked up a tip or two that might help you if you decide to tackle a project like this. So from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards, thanks for watching, take good care, and remember, it's just wood color and some shiny stuff, just like the sign says. Thank you very much. We'll see you next video. Bye.